Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the Railbookers webinar, all about imperial cities by train, Berlin, Vienna, Prague, and more. That's me, Gareth Jones. I'm not sure about that photo, to be honest with you, but nice to meet you all. First thing I'd like to do, if it's all right with everybody, is on the control bar on the right-hand side, you should all be able to see an area. It says questions. And if you'd be kind enough just to pop a little note in there saying, hello, let me know your name and where you're tuning in from. We had people in from South Africa, Australia, and San Francisco, strangely enough, this morning. But also, it's just to make sure that you can all hear me okay. From what I can see on the display this side, it all looks to be working a-okay. Good stuff. Mel, Lydia, thank you very much. First on the board. Good to hear from you. I'm glad you can hear me all right. Oh, there's lots of you now. Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Okay, well, let's get going, shall we? Let's get going. And what we're going to cover, well, of course, we're going to talk about some holidays by train to the imperial cities, Vienna, Prague, Berlin, Budapest, for example. We're going to look at some other bits other bits as well. We're going to look at what traveling by train looks like in the current world, what European rail operators are doing to make sure we're all traveling in a safe environment. We're going to look at some very limited time offers as well, some great savings on some holidays to be booked for the future. We're also going to have a good 5 minutes at the end of the webinar for questions. Now, the questions area that many of you have found in terms of introducing yourself, thanks again to everybody. Please use that as we go along, okay? I've got it open in front of me. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to try and answer as we go along, but there is a dedicated 5 minutes at the end of the webinar as well, so feel free to save your questions till then. It's up to you, but I'm here to help, okay? Some of you may be familiar with Railbookers already, so if you are, apologies for going over this, but it's good for those who aren't too familiar with Railbookers to let you know who we are, what we do. Why do our travellers love Railbookers? A few reasons. Well, bucket list experiences for special occasions, not just luxury trains such as the Orient Express, for example, but some really special experiences, tiny little hotels at the top of mountains in Switzerland, for example. Amazing overnight journeys on regular sleeper trains through landscapes that you can't get to any other way apart from by train. Freedom and flexibility. We're not a group operator, so it's always important to remind people that we're not a group operator. So with our holiday packages, you'll have hotels, train travel, and tours. So you've got to abide by the nights you've got booked at the hotels, the times of your trains, and when your tours are booked for. But that's it. The rest of the time, your holiday is yours to enjoy. We're not going to tell you where to go for dinner. You choose where you go for lunch, that sort of thing. You've all tuned into a Railbookers webinar. I'm sure you're all familiar with train travel being the best way to enjoy the scenery as you're passing along. You don't get to look out the window if you're on an aeroplane or on a coach, for example. All of our itineraries are customizable. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, you can chop them and change them as much as you want. You can add destinations in, take them away, change the class of travel. We have a selection of hotels in all the major destinations for you to choose from. There's no additional cost in terms of changing a holiday, apart from, of course, you're adding bits on. It's going to cost more if you're taking bits out. It will cost less. But they're all completely changeable, completely flexible. Deposit now, pay later. Of course, we pride ourselves in offering a very low deposit amount, generally £150 per person, unless there's flights and other bits included. And then the remaining balance isn't due until 3 months prior to the trip, which, considering we have bookings, holidays available up to October 2022 at this stage, a small deposit secures everything. It secures the price, it secures all the hotels, etc. Then you've got something to look forward to in 2 years' time. On the flip side of that, though, of course, we can get everything booked, all the travel documentation in your hand and all set to go if you were booking something just 2 days prior to departure. Obviously, our options are fairly limited from, shall we say, from the UK at the moment, but who knows, 4 or 5 months down the line, perhaps looking to early next year, who knows, who knows. Wherever you are in the world on a Railbookers holiday, you'll have an emergency number to call, and you'll be able to get through to any of our staff. in normal times, we have offices in Sydney, London, of course, 2 offices in the US, Laguna and Beverly, just north of Boston, and in Toronto, Canada. So wherever you are in the world, whatever the time, you can call the number, get through to any of our staff, they'll be able to assist you. Excuse me. On that control bar on the right-hand side bit where you found the questions area, there's a little area that says handouts. If you open that up, you'll find that map. You'll find a couple of documents, one thing about offers, but that map's in there as well. You can download that, save it to your laptop or your tablet, or print it off. All those different coloured lines, they're different rail operators, rail lines. We're best placed. We work with them all. We know our stuff. We know the best connections, the best routes. We take the mystery out of rail travel. And these are just a handful of our direct rail partners. As I said, we have direct relationships with these rail operators. We have our own dedicated booking system. We have access to the actual seats, the trains before they're made available to the public. And I said at the beginning, what does traveling by train in Europe look like at the moment? Well, it really does depend where you are. The countries, there's some things which they haven't, but they all have in place. Of course, everyone's saying you have to wear masks, etc. We'll get onto that shortly. Forgive me. Maximum flexibility offer. The maximum flexibility offer is something we've had in place for the whole year, and we'll have it in place until the end of the year as well. Any bookings made are covered by this, and it essentially means that you can postpone your trip up to 5 days prior to departure, or without any cancellation or amendment fees from us. So we don't charge you anything for changing the date up to 5 days prior to departure, which is very flexible. And here are some offers that I mentioned as well. Limited time, so we've got a couple of weeks on these and that's it. Now, any holiday, 4 nights or more, to Switzerland, to Scotland, or to Vienna, or including Vienna. You don't spend 4 nights in Vienna, but including Vienna. If you're traveling as a couple, £300 per couple. If you're traveling independently, still get £150 saving. If you travel to Italy via the Alps, we'll have a look at via the Alps shortly. It's a really lovely route by train into Italy. 7 nights or more, forgive me, 7 nights more in Italy, £400 per saving. And then we've got a great holiday, Italian lakes and Swiss mountains, which does what it says on the tin. You start in Rome, then you make your way up to Lake Maggiore, 2 nights in Lake Como, then up to through Switzerland on the Bernina Express, the Glacier Express. It's amazing. £500 per couple. Good question. Is there a single supplement? It's a very regular question we get asked. There's not a case of there's a single supplement in terms of it's an additional fee for people traveling independently. It's just a case of how different hotels will offer room for single occupancy. Some hotels will have dedicated smaller rooms, single rooms. Some hotels won't. They'll just have a double room, which obviously the cost is normally shared between 2 people, but then it's generally just applied to 1 person. So there's not a supplement, there's not an additional cost charged from us for somebody traveling independently. And the cost of the hotels can sometimes be equally the same cost as the cost that's shared between 2 people. I hope that's answered your question right. Here we go. How are rail operators maintaining a safe environment? Well, let's say across the board, as we are in this country as well, everyone's requiring facial coverings in stations and on trains for passengers and staff. So we've got to have a mask on. Okay. Stopping the sale of food and drink on board trains. It depends where you are. Obviously, in this country, some trains are now you can get a cup of coffee and a bag of crisps. In Eastern Europe, for example, going through Germany, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, as we're going to look shortly, you can still get the buffet cars open. You get a meal. You sometimes get beer on tap. There's great service on board. France, Italy, no, the buffet cars are still closed. But I think it's important to note here that one of the joys of traveling by train is you don't have the restrictions you have in place if you're flying, for example. So you can, of course, take a picnic with you. Why not? It's not particularly attractive at the moment with you wearing a mask, trying to eat a picnic whilst wearing a mask, but further down the line, you can surreptitiously have a sandwich or something. The Marks and Spencer's is open opposite the Eurostar terminal at St Pancras. You pop in there, get a sandwich, get a bag of crisps. It's great, you know, it's lovely to take a picnic, take a bottle of wine with you if you've got a long journey. Open to do that. Changing seat configuration allocation on board to allow for social distancing. So less and less, actually. In France, the unions and the power they have managed to convince the French government to allow them to run some TGVs at 100% capacity if they wish to. Elsewhere in Italy, they can't do that. So you do find in most countries there's still that social distancing in place. So the odd seat left empty and so you cannot sit here. Now, of course, that becomes less obvious if you're traveling in first class. So there are fewer seats available, more legroom, more space in first class. Increased cleaning and sanitation, of course, cleaners on board the train as you go along, not just at the start and the end of the trip. And contactless ticket control. So have your ticket on your phone or your device. I mean, if that is a problem, don't worry, you can always send out a copy of the ticket, of the actual confirmation itself on paper form. Let's have a look at some holidays. So the Vienna city break, 5 days, so 4 nights in total. Well, that's if you're taking the rail back. Overnight train from Brussels or Cologne. So you take the Eurostar to Brussels, 3 days a week it goes to directly from Brussels. The rest of the time it goes from Cologne, the sleeper train. That's fine though, because there's a high-speed train between Brussels and Cologne anyway. It's under 2 hours, so it's very easy, whichever way around. And then the sleeper train, overnight train, leaves Cologne around about 8 o'clock in the evening, gets into Vienna about 9 o'clock in the morning. Lovely way to travel. 2 nights in Vienna, you get a hop-on, hop-off sightseeing tour as well. Great way to get around the city and actually take in the amazing architecture that you see. And that cost includes the flight back. Now, if you want to take the train back, of course we can do that, no problem at all. You could come back the same route, which would be the sleeper train back, or Vienna to Munich, for example. The flight doesn't have to be back to London, it can be any airport in the UK. And Vienna, of course, and the amazing architecture, rich in history, some amazing art galleries. You have the Schönbrunn Palace and the Vienna Zoo, but the palace itself and the gardens are particularly spectacular. But the sleeper train itself as well, it's good fun. It's very hard, to be honest with you, to get good images of sleeper trains. The rail operators are not very good at selling themselves in terms of sleeper train images of onboard trains, etc. I can't guarantee you'll always get the image of the ibex or the deer, but that's the setup for the 4 berths. So if there's 4 of you traveling, you get your own, but you can get your own berth. If you're on a budget, you can get 1 berth, you can get 1 bunk and shared 4 berth. They generally do separate the male or female. Otherwise, the package is based on because it's based on 2 people, the package is based on a double cabin. You can get solo occupancy cabins as well. They're more expensive, of course, than sharing one of the 4 berths, but you get that private space. The double berth, the single berth, or the triple berth are very much laid up like this. You can see in the top left-hand corner, they're very comfortable seats during the daytime. This is in the morning. The gentleman there will be wearing a mask at the moment, of course. He will bring you breakfast in the morning. There's no restaurant on the train, so you don't get dinner, I'm afraid. And when you board in Cologne or Brussels or vice versa, it will actually be set up already as the sleeping setup. With the bunk just above their head that folds down into a bunk, and then the seats sort of fold down into a bunk as well. You can get the deluxe cabins as well. Now, on this particular train, there's generally only about 2 of those each departure, so it's really limited availability. So it's best to get in there as early as possible if you want the deluxe cabin to make sure you can get it. Now, deluxe basically a little bit bigger with ensuite as well. Okay. Now, I should mention, forgive me, before we go into Grand Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, it's not just Vienna that we've got the city break with the sleeper train. We have the Prague city break as well, where you take the train from London to Paris, Paris to Zurich, and then a direct overnight train from Zurich to Prague. Okay, So again, we've got such a huge variety of holiday packages, all the destinations to choose from, etc. We can always get you there as directly as possible and have that great sleeper train fun in there as well. Anyway, forgive me, Grand Berlin, Prague, and Vienna, Budapest. Any holiday that's called Grand on our website include first class travel. Now, first class travel, what do you get? Again, it depends on where you are. The Eurostar from London, first class would be, it's called Standard Premier, and they've recently brought back the meal service. You do get meal and drinks included. It's not what it used to be, but it's still better than a meal on an aeroplane, to be honest with you. So that's included. Now, heading elsewhere through Eastern Europe, Germany, etc., much more comfortable in first class, of course, but you don't actually get any meals or drinks included. What you do get is a table service. So you'll get essentially a guard waiter will be have a menu, bring in a menu at your seat. If you want to order anything, he'll bring it to your table and you pay there. Okay, you don't have to go to the buffet car, and you can get freshly cooked meals as well. I mean, currywursts run at IC in Germany, etc. The holiday itself, you go from London to Berlin in one day. What does that entail? A Eurostar to Brussels, and then that high-speed ICE train to Cologne, and another high-speed ICE train from Cologne to Berlin. Leave London around 9 o'clock in the evening, get to Berlin about 8:30 that evening. So it's a long day traveling, but it's just wonderfully comfortable. Again, you're in first class. You get to see the German countryside. It's really nice. 2 nights in each of Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, the direct first class train between them all. Walking tour in Berlin, hop on, hop off sightseeing tours in Prague and Vienna, and you finish with a nice Danube cruise in Budapest. One of my favorite cities, Berlin. It's not as, I think it's fair to say obvious, but it's not as obvious as somewhere like Paris, for example, where it has the Statue of Liberty, the Sacré-Cœur, Notre Dame. It has so many big sites. Berlin, of course, you've got the Brandenburg Gate, blimey. The Brandenburg Gate, I forgot that one. You've got the Brandenburg Gate, of course, you've got Checkpoint Charlie, you've got the old bits of the wall and stuff, but having the walking tour here is great, I think. It's led by a local, they know their stuff, and they can point out the historic bits that aren't really as obvious, and you need sort of a bit of guidance in terms of understanding the importance of these places. But as I said, in Prague and Vienna, you've got the hop on, hop off pass as well. That's not just, the great thing about those is they don't just cover the hop on, hop off bus as well. A lot of the time that includes more walking tours, etc., giving you the flexibility to choose how you use it. The bus routes, though, are great, of course, because you get between the major sites that you want to go and visit. You get the flexibility to kind of jump up on and off as you want, but you also get to take in the architecture and the scenery as you're driving around. You're not worried about going the right way, looking at a map, etc. And then finally, Budapest. Lovely, lovely city, the Paris of the East. It's gorgeous. It really is. The Parliament building there. One of the most beautiful buildings in Europe. It's gorgeous. And then the other side of the river is the Fisherman's Bastion. There's the Budapest Castle. Amazing views across the river. Beautiful place just to kind of wander about. But then it's lovely to kind of sign off your holiday, the last night of your holiday. You're on a cruise down the Danube, enjoying a few drinks, taking in the lights and the sights. It's a lovely ending to your holiday. It's a lovely holiday as well. Now, next, Zurich, Salzburg, and Vienna. They're all via the Railbookers Pass, which is a very historic, famous route through the Alps as well. So here you're taking the route London to Paris, Paris to Zurich, overnight Zurich. Then you go via the spectacular Railbookers Pass, 2 nights in Salzburg and 3 in Vienna before taking the flight back. We've got the rail route in there as well. In case you want to come back by train, you can take again that sleeper train from Vienna back to Cologne and Brussels and on to London the following day. Starting price just on £1,160 per person. All the holiday pricing includes the travel, so here are the flights and the trains, the accommodation, 4-star on average, 3 to 4-star on average in each city. Breakfast at the hotels, plus the sightseeing mentioned as well. There's an attractions pass, a Vienna pass included here. Gets you all into all the major museums, etc. in Vienna. That gives you an idea of the sort of scenery through the Arlberg Pass. You pass through St. Anton am Arlberg, famous ski resort. So obviously during the winter months, it's a lot whiter than it is there, but the trains run throughout the year. It is spectacular in parts, it really is. We've looked at Vienna a bit already, but Zurich, really lovely, really lovely. It's a fun running theme I have with Swiss cities in particular, but it's got a lovely old town. It really does. Zurich Old Town is gorgeous, and there's lots of old taverns and bars to enjoy in the evening. Down by the lake, it's gorgeous. They've got some great art galleries there as well. You could even quite easily just do a quick half-day trip up to the Rhine Falls and Schaffhausen. It's only around about 45 minutes away, the largest waterfalls in Europe. So if you're looking to kind of change it a bit, an extra night in Zurich is a lovely thing to do. As Salzburg, we've got a great partner in Salzburg who can offer sort of sound and music tours if that's something you'd be interested in, or perhaps even a day trip down to Hallstatt on the lake, which is particularly gorgeous. But of course, the history in Salzburg is enough to keep you occupied there for a day. Next, Berlin, Prague, Krakow and Warsaw, heading into Poland this time as well. The rail connections between Berlin and Poland have always been very good, Berlin and Warsaw, but the Prague to Krakow direct line is relatively new, to be honest with you, and they're improving the rail connections more and more actually cross borders, which is great. Again, here you've got the London to Berlin in one go. If you didn't want to spend that whole day traveling, then you could always, of course, break it up with a night in Brussels or a night in Cologne, which would be lovely. 2 nights, Berlin, Prague, Krakow and Warsaw. And you've got the salt mine tour in Krakow, Prague, hop on, hop off bus. As mentioned, the bus has got the boat cruise on it as well, so you can get out on the water in Prague. And the half-day sightseeing tour in Warsaw, which again is led by a local. It's really important to us in these places that the guides or any walking tours, etc., they're always locals who know their stuff. They're very proud to show off their city. They're not just going by a guidebook themselves and that's it, you know. And Krakow, it always amazes me, the largest dedicated old town area in the world, Krakow. If you wanted to go to Auschwitz as well, of course, we can fulfill that, a small group tour, half day or full day, if you wish. And then Venice and Vienna via the Alps. So I mentioned at the beginning via the Alps as a route into Italy. Well, via the Alps route for us is by the Simplon Pass, which is amazingly scenic. It's beautiful. Here, again, going out via Paris direct to Lausanne on Lake Geneva. Again, beautiful old town. It's gorgeous. Lausanne, very steep. So you kind of go up from the station into the old town, huge, great medieval cathedral, but then you can go down to the side of the lake as well. Uchi was particularly lovely hotels we worked with down by the lake itself. The hotel based on here in Lausanne is directly over the road from the train station. So one night it's quite good. You get in around about 7 o'clock in the evening. Your train's leaving around about sort of 8 o'clock in 8:30 in the morning. So you've got the evening there. An extra night in Lausanne would be lovely again, because you can even take a boat cruise along Lake Geneva to Montreux or even to Chillon Castle next door to it. Beautiful medieval castle right on the lake. Either way, the train from Lausanne is direct to Venice. It passes through Milan. It does continue all the way to Venice. 2 nights in Venice, including a walking tour and gondola ride there. And then the direct train up to Vienna. Again, that Vienna Pass included in there before returning via that sleeper train from Vienna to Cologne or Brussels and all the way back. So the Simplon Pass, as you'd imagine, you're coming from the Swiss Alps essentially, so you're dropping down. This is an image taken from the train as you're passing Lake Maggiore. It's that close to the lake. It's gorgeous. It's really, really pretty. Then the train will pass through Milan. Continuing on to Venice, it passes by Lake Garda as well, so you get amazing views of Lake Garda. It's really spectacular. It really is. This is the Simplon Pass is where the Venice Simplon Orient Express got the Simplon bit in its name from as well. It's a really historic route. The great thing about that route as well is it passes through Milan, and Milan is the gateway to getting further into Italy. So if you wanted to go anywhere in Italy, follow that route and then change connections in Milan and off you go. But again, you've got the walking tour in Venice now, led by a Venetian, which is great. And if you're familiar with the local population in Venice is dwindling, as people are moving away. But if you can get a Venetian showing you around Venice, you know, you're seeing the sites that are kept quiet and not shown to the general usual visitors as well. So really lovely experience. And the Vienna sightseeing pass as well just opens the doors to all the art galleries, the Spanish riding school. I mentioned the Schönbrunn Palace before as well, but you get in there for a tour. Well, I hope that's whetted the appetite a little bit. Please let me know if any of those caught your eye, or is there any destinations that you might be interested in hearing more about that we offer. Upcoming webinars. Next week, Italy by train. In 2 weeks' time, Scotland. Unsurprisingly, it's been most popular destinations this year is getting to Scotland. We've got some great holiday packages up there, particularly going up to the Highlands, but also the Jacobite train from Fort Meleg, for example. And then on the 3rd of November, top 5 holidays via the Alps are going into Italy and beyond. Now, as promised, question time. Please do let me know of any questions. Doris, I can see you're asking about taking your dog. Not on the Eurostar, I'm afraid, which kind of scuppers taking dogs anywhere. Some rail operators are a bit more welcoming. Dogs across in France, they are, but Eurostar is a no first off, so I'm afraid not. Gay, no problem. I'm glad you got the information you're looking for on the sleeper trains. Liz, absolutely, yeah, that's what I mean. So the flexible side of things, if you wanted to customize it a little bit, you could take out Prague from the Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, for example. So as said, Berlin, Warsaw, Krakow, the connection Krakow, that's sort of the connection Krakow down to Budapest or Vienna, not that great, but I'm sure we could find a convenient way of routing it. But yeah, no problem at all. That could certainly work. Warsaw, Gillian. So in the holiday which we went over, we included Warsaw. We did Berlin, Prague, Krakow, and Warsaw. So we did it that way around, and then a flight back. But the most direct route to get to Warsaw is actually Berlin, and then a direct train from Berlin to Warsaw. It's very easy. Have a night in Berlin, perhaps have 2, because then at least you've got the day there, and on you go. Oh, Doris, on the sleeper train. So asking about the toilet facilities on the sleeper train. Yeah, so the deluxe cabins will have their own suite. There's only obviously 2 or 3, I think it is, on the Cologne Vienna sleeper. If you don't have deluxe, then yeah, there's toilet facilities at the end of every carriage. Again, with the onboard cleaning facilities as they are, they're cleaned on a regular basis. But again, if you're boarding the train at 8 o'clock in the evening, they'll be cleaned by the morning, but they won't have cleaners throughout the evening as such. Gillian, so how many nights in Warsaw? What's included, please? So with the holiday we highlighted, there are 2 nights in Warsaw, and you had a tour, just a city tour with a local guide there. Small groups, so no groups no more bigger than 10, 15 people. We have the option if you're either a private tour, we can do that. But again, the joy of how we operate, if you wanted to spend longer in a destination, we can add nights on. If you wanted to tell us you wanted to go to Warsaw, for example, we could create a Warsaw city break for you and say 3 or 4 nights. And if it's any particular sightseeing you wanted to do in Warsaw, then we could help you there. The hotel we use in Warsaw at the moment, the Polonia Palace, it's fantastic, not too far from the station. It's actually a 4-star, but a really well-priced 4-star hotel. That's all right, no problem. It's a city I've not actually been to myself, but I would love to go. Actually, I've never been. It's strange to say, the product manager. I've never been to Poland myself, but I really would love to go. You know, Warsaw and Krakow, I think, take the headlines quite a bit. It has so much more to offer in terms of the smaller cities, Poznan, Wrocław, for example, even getting up to Gdansk. We do have a Polish explorer holiday with flights out, flight back, or a train out and train back version as well, a little bit longer. Which you can explore. Once you get there, the trains are very good quality. You've got some lots of high-speed rail trains around Poland now between the major cities. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it entertaining. If you need any further information, please don't hesitate in giving us a call, 0203 780 2222. Feel free to drop me an email, gareth.jones@railbookers.com, if you like, or if you've got a travel agent nearby, pop down and see them. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care now. Keep well. Bye-bye.